I was happy when you reached out. I contacted Scott and he's like, yeah, they just started yesterday. So I'm like, oh, good, we finally got them, because we've been in a queue for them for a while.
Yeah.
We don't currently have an electrician.
Saturday nights, no lights whatsoever. Sunday, we had only one side of Main Street. Tonight, they're all out all the way to Drummond.
The November 18th, 2024 Auburn City Council Workshop will be called to order. The first item of business tonight is continuing discussion on property tax assistance. So following up on the comments from the council in the prior meetings, the city manager and I worked to draft a proposed property tax assistance program for council consideration. This is based on the framework within the state statute for municipal controlled property tax assistance. And I think perhaps the way to work through this is to go through this proposal thinking of this as a whole year, complete fiscal year program. As we work through this, if the council finds that they think that this is an acceptable way to proceed, we can have some discussions about how this might be used in the current year towards the credits towards the second payment, because there's some factors within this as a whole year program that numbers of residents probably won't have the requisite information to apply. So with that, I'll turn it over to the manager and he'll walk us through the draft ordinance.
Oops. Thank you, Mayor. City Council, as the mayor said, I think that the key here is just to see if we're framing this out as you had discussed. I think that one thing that the state allows for, and this is under Title 36, Section 907A, is that it does allow for a municipality to implement a program, but there are guardrails. And so we need to make sure that we're operating within those guardrails. The mayor and I took some liberties as far as, what age should we be creating? What's the cap on what we feel that should be expended? So there's a few of those that we'll go over as we walk through this. Most of this is definitions that come from the statute, making sure that we're meeting that criteria as we lay this out. So the first one that I guess you could say where we took some liberties is on the age, and so starting the age. There are some municipalities that say it's 70 years of age. What we've suggested starting off is that the age would be set at 65. The person, and this is for a program, property tax assistance program, the person 65 years of age or over and reside in the city of Auburn. And then there's a residential requirement that's outlined in the state statute as well. So if you look at the definitions, we talk about homestead. What is a homestead? Key here is that the program actually states that it's tax paying and rent. So there's a combination here, and so that carries through. So it could be somebody who is a rent that's paying rent and seeking tax assistance. The qualifying applicant, one thing that we're looking at is that it's determined by the program administrator, and then the program administrator will have to review this ordinance and the state statute and the requirements that we're outlining in here to make sure that they qualify to apply. And as the mayor said, let's look at it as a whole year, and then we'll determine what you'd like to do if you want to do something mid-year. My recommendation is that we wait and we do this through the budget process and kind of walk through that, but that's up to you on how you want to proceed with that. However, the program does talk about, one of the requirements in here is about what they need to file for their taxes and being able to receive and I'll go over it in a minute, but it's within the property tax credit. And if they are eligible for that, A lot of people would not have applied for that yet because we're just educating and just putting this information out. So that means you'd have a few people that would not qualify, not meet that requirement. So we wouldn't really get a full sense of what the, how many people may apply for this moving forward. So the program administrator is a person that I would designate within staff. I talked about this before when we did not we, but when the state set up the senior tax stabilization program, we did have to bring in a staff member to process all those applications and what that, all that was required within that. You know, we've been running some numbers just internally, just on what do we think the capacity is for this. But it's a decent lift that there's not one position in the city that has that type of capacity that we could say, you now administer this program as well. A lot of it's going to depend on what we receive for our requests. There is an annual review, so the person has to apply annually. So that means annually that person's going to have to process that application, the program administrator. And so even though if it's somebody that's already applied, it'll be a lot, that processing of that application would go a lot faster, obviously, than a new application. The property tax fairness credit program is what I mentioned before. This is established under the Maine statutes, and it's part of the state of Maine's revenue program. And so we talk about this in the ordinance where someone will need to make sure that they apply for that and they qualify to then apply and receive a benefit in this program. So one step that we require you to do as a council is to annually appropriate the funds. The way that we drafted this was that the disbursement of these funds, and I'll go over this in a minute, but the disbursement of the funds is based on the funding that's allocated. So if the council determines they're going to put $400,000 in for this assistance, and the requests come in and it exceeds that amount, we could then take the amount that we have and break that disbursement out. So, and kind of prorate that so that we can allocate the funds as necessary based on what's in the account. And so we can work through that, but it at least creates an opportunity so that if we're not funding the full amount, we'll know, because some of this is going to be best guess. What do we think we're going to receive? One thing that we started taking a look at is the applications that we received for the senior tax stabilization program. And then knowing that if we had this many, what's the percentage of households that are over 65, the median age, median income rather, what's that percentage? Just so we could try to back into this. And so we're estimating that it'll be somewhere around 400 to 500,000 is what we think would be the right number to at least begin the program. So that second paragraph, this kind of talks about what I just mentioned about proportionally dispersing the funds based on the ratio of what's available and what's been requested. So the criteria for participation, and like I said, some of this is mandated and some of this is the state does provide for opportunities for municipalities to set certain standards. So as I mentioned before, this is age 65. The applicant resides in the city of Auburn, have a homestead. Qualifications for homestead is that they've resided in the city for 10 years. And so that would carry over here. The property owner, applicant has a homestead exemption benefit to ensure that they are receiving that. And then the applicant has received the tax credit provision that I mentioned as part of the property tax fairness credit program. The federal adjusted gross income of the applicant and then any other adult members of the applicant's household combined, so the total household income does not exceed the current city's median household income. And that will be determined based on the Bureau of Census of the most recent one available. The applicant or any member of the household did not receive nor is eligible to receive any rental assistance. So that helps determine the criteria as well. ensure that there's not multiple funds coming in to help with the tax relief. And then the payment of is immediately preceding the fiscal year property taxes, and ensuring that any past taxes are also paid for, so that you can have outstanding taxes, property taxes, and be eligible for this. So you have to be paid in full. This is the piece that the mayor said, and right now we plugged some dates in here, but I think this is one where adjustments on the initial program can be determined by the council. This would be that applications would be due at a certain date, except for the initial programming year that provides you an opportunity to make those adjustments. The applications are due by November 15th. That allows for the property tax assistance for the tax year. This one would be for 2024 of the program. And then we would actually use, if we were to do this midstream, I guess you would call it, it would allow you to be able to use the 2024 tax fairness assistance from the state. You'd be able to use that for 2 years. So whatever you were to file, then we'd have to use that same tax year the following year, depending on when we align the due dates of this program. The program administrator would ensure that all the application, all the documents, and everything is provided, and any other evidence that might be needed. We wouldn't, it states right in here, we're not keeping people's tax returns, we're not keeping any of that, it's just to verify. Once you verify, all that information goes back to the individual, so we wouldn't have any confidential income records or tax returns here within the city. If it determines that the applicant is eligible, we put some of what would the benefit be, the amount of the credit qualified under the property tax fairness credit, not to exceed $1,000 or exceed the gross property tax or rent when combined with the property tax fairness credit. So ensuring that if somebody's taxes is, say, $600, they're not receiving the property tax fairness credit and this credit, which then exceeds what their property taxes due would be. So it would be built off from what is actually owed. And then I already mentioned the pro rata share based on available monies within the program and how we would set this up. So we would, we'll be working with finance if this is something we're going to move forward with to ensure that they establish a special revenue account. That special revenue account would be funds that we would then transfer in from the general fund through the budget process into that account, and then we would draw from that account. So you may make an amount in year one, and we estimate that it's going to be $400,000. Maybe what we have is we have $280,000 that we're going to distribute out. That money then stays in that special revenue account, then builds in that account. So the following year, we would only appropriate what we believe would be to cover, or what the council would determine would be what you would want to at least take out of the general fund to allocate or reimburse that account, so that account stays funded for that next year. Timing of the payments, this is one where I think that if we have all the documentation, we have the information, then we would make sure that we would mail those checks out by September 1st of that year that their taxes is due, so that way the money is received. That's one where we'd go back and take a look at. There are some communities that require payment first, then reimbursement, and we've got to work through that, whether or not that's a requirement or if it's just an option that municipalities took. So some do this for the second payment, so they make it available by April 1st, so that way, of that following year. So that way they would have that for their second payment, depending on when their tax payments are due. So this is one that we can also take a look at once we set the all the timing of when applications due, what's the payment period that we're looking at. Then we can back into when the timing of the payments would be dispersed. Only one qualifying applicant per household is entitled to receive any funding out of the program. This would be an ordinance that we'd be putting in place, so the right to file is based on the based on the ordinance, and, oops. Sorry, I hit the wrong tab. And then we would make sure that we provide a report back to the council prior to you going into your budget discussions. So by the end of a calendar year, we would provide a report back to the council on what we disperse. So if the disbursements are in September, we'd make sure we would have a report back to you before the end of the year so that you could use that information. What's the number of eligible applicants? How much did we disperse? What's the surplus? Or we wouldn't have any shortage in that fund unless it was something that you would authorize, but we wouldn't have any shortage. But then you could determine what you would want to budget for the upcoming year. That's basically the program outline. Like I said, this varies with communities. We could provide you some samples of some different ordinances some other communities have, but I was looking at one, I think one of the, might have been Cape Elizabeth, but I believe the age is 70. Some things within the program changes because it's a sliding scale based on what they disperse. I think they disperse anywhere between 500, 750, or 1,000 based on income, and so they break it out that way. So we can dig into this more, but this was at least a starting point to see if this is framing up to what you're looking for. Obviously, there's a bigger conversation here as well for you counselors that you're going to need to wrestle with, and that's, do you want to implement a program? Because that's going to come, I just want to make sure it's really clear. This will be coming out of general fund as you fund this moving forward in the future. So that'll be a budgeted amount to create the special revenue account. But any questions?
Questions or comments from the council? Council Platts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. Just a thought, and I think this can probably be achieved when we write up an application process, but having in my mind, I'm trying to figure out what an applicant would deserve, basing on income, basing on et cetera, et cetera. Part of me feels like it should be based on their gross property taxes, what they're paying into the municipality, not what they're obviously there's thresholds for income, but as far as what the rebate is or what the contribution to their taxes are, I feel like on the limit where it says not to exceed $1,000, maybe there's some consideration to change that to not to exceed a certain percentage of their gross property tax bill, but also not to exceed 1,000, because you wouldn't want someone with a $1,000 property bill to get $1,000,
right,
but someone for 4,000 to only get 1,000. That's not equitable.
Yeah, so that's a great observation. So let me give a little explanation about how the property tax fairness credit works, because it's based on that concept. So in broad sense, what happens with the property tax fairness credit is you apply, it looks at your income, and if you meet, if you're below a certain threshold, then you're eligible. And generally what it's doing is it's calculating out for homeowners what 4% of that income would be, and the property tax fairness credit applies to property taxes that were assessed in excess of 4% of income. And the way it works for renters is it's a similar formula. It gets a bit more complicated because it excludes heat, lights, if it's furnished, and it's the base rent. And there's a calculation that the state uses. If you don't know that, it basically takes 15% off the top, use that as a rental amount, and then it applies the figure. So it's already calculating out, if you will, a ratio between income and the property tax. And so the idea here would be, instead of burdening the city staff with having to do all these types of calculations to figure out what the rebate amount would be, what we've suggested is that you use the amount that the state is calculating out with a property tax fairness credit, and you match that. Of course, you know, some people may be under the 1,000, some people may be 4. I went and talked to a couple senior citizens a week ago that are struggling, and just using the 2023 numbers for their income, they would get almost $1,500 back. So, you know, in our program, we'd match that. You know, they had $3,200, $3,300 in property tax. They were going to get $1,400, $1,500 from the state. We'd match that. But they're, in this case, you know, they're elderly folks whose combined income with 2 Social Securities is $30,000 a year. So the state's kind of already calculating along the way you're thinking about this, and we're saying, okay, we'll let them do the calculations, we'll provide a match. Is that helpful?
Yeah. That is helpful, thank you.
Other thoughts or questions from the council? Council Wiseman?
Yes, I'd just like to just make a comment. Thank you to staff for this coming back to us, because when I first proposed seeing something of a program coming, and to having the notices go out, to now having this for us to dive in more, I'm very hopeful for it and excited to look into this more and come up, see what we can do to, if the council can help people. Thank you.
Other questions or thoughts? Council Cowan?
A couple comments. First, thank you for putting this together. I think it's well played out. Your explanation just now makes a lot of sense. I was thinking, struggling, wrapping my head around, similar to what Councilor Platt said. The only other thing that I would suggest be considered is, rather than the city overall median household income, is to go with median household income that's for 65 and older. If that data is available sufficiently, it may not be. The latest that I could find was from the 5-year estimates, so that would be a little bit behind, but it's a little bit lower and might be more applicable. But if that would set us away from the parameters that are already set up by the state, that may not be advantageous. So.
Other thoughts or questions from the council? Council Whiting?
I guess I'm a little concerned because I think the percentage of people that are below area median income is probably higher among the elderly by quite a bit. And I'd be concerned about a couple things. One is you're raising taxes on other people to lower taxes for this group of people who are no doubt needy. But the other issue is, do we set ourselves up for failure like the state legislature did when they had this big program that was so popular that they found that the budgetary impacts were so great that they couldn't continue?
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. The property tax fairness credit was already in place when the state did their senior program, so that was already available. Yeah, it's hard to say. We're going to have the legislative delegation here in a little bit, and we can see what their thoughts are, whether it changes. I think there's some protections in here for the gross amount, and as you've mentioned, the core policy issue here is whether or not the council wants to take general fund property tax generated monies and redistribute part of that to renters, you know, seniors that rent or own property who are having a more difficult time with the property tax. Council Whiting?
Question, I'm assuming the area median income is based on household size, so it would differ if there was, because you have, you know, grandparents that have grandchildren, so they could have a household of 3 or 4, even though they're elderly, and in their case, they might have a very low income with a fairly big, you know, family budget.
Right, so in calculating the property tax fairness credit, it takes into account the number of people in the family. What's in the ordinance is just a straight cutoff, and it's median family income, which currently is 59,000 and change. I'm not sure exactly, 59 something, and it's calculated by the census. So if the way this is proposed now, we can look at altering it, but the way it's proposed now, if the total family, adults in the family, if their income exceeded that 59,000, whatever it is, they would not, they might still be eligible for other programs, but they would not be eligible for this program. And so it's, if there's minors in the household, that's taken into account when they calculate the property tax fairness credit. If they're not generating any income, it wouldn't go towards the household income not exceeding the 59,000. Councilor Cowan?
And to your reference, Councilor Whiting, the median household income for 65 in the same time period as the median household income for the whole city is 59,000. It's 50,000 for those over 65. So it's a little bit, but it's not a whole lot lower than we might think. But you're right, it would be more than 50% that, by income that would qualify.
Other questions or comments from the council? No? Great. If you have any, I think the way that, if this is a sense of the council that you want to go in this direction, we'll look at some of these. If you have any other questions that come to mind, please forward them to the city manager, and perhaps it might take some time to fine tune this. We could have it on the agenda on December 16th.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, one other question, and this is to the city manager. If we were to consider a partial program for this year that's having to come from general funds, it would be helpful to, are we then, in order to make any money available, would we have to say you need to take it from these lines, or is there already savings that you could provide us at a future date?
Yeah, so it's a few things I would say about that, Councilor Cowan. There's a few things to think about here. If you wanted to do this in the partial year, as the manager pointed out, if you recall from our earlier discussion, a third of the qualifying homesteads in Auburn have not filed for the homestead exemption. That's a requirement in here. The second thing is, as I talk to seniors that have been struggling with property taxes, I haven't found any of them yet that filed for the property tax fairness credit. So the first thing I would say, if the sense of the council is to try to do something this year, I think that you would not want to require the filing of the homestead or the property tax fairness credit, because you're going to cut out a lot of potential people that might qualify, other than the fact they didn't know about these programs. The other thing then, I think, if you want to do something this year, perhaps we would use the same calculation the state uses of the 4% threshold on the property tax and the calculations about rent with the median family income to see if someone's eligible. And then I believe it would work the same way. We would have to allocate funds. There are no currently appropriated funds for this purpose, so you would have to move funds from elsewhere in the budget or appropriate undesignated fund balance into a special revenue account. And you might, since it's the second half of the year, you might have a different limit, $250 max or $500. You're not going to have a property tax fairness credit a match against, right? You might just set a threshold and say if you qualify, it would be this amount. So if the sense of the council is to try to sort of generally apply something like this year, I think we can work on that with staff and come up with some more details. I think it's a heavier administrative lift, because you're not relying on the state property tax fairness credit calculation, but it's something if the council would like to see something like that, we could work on that and bring back a proposal.
Yeah.
My own,
No, go ahead.
my own thought is actually, we've given permission to submit advertising to encourage people to reach out for assistance. Let's see what happens with that this year and give ourselves more time. I just didn't know if that was going to be a next step we would want to take, so.
Yeah, definitely. My recommendation is going to be that, we've seen what takes place at the state when they rush the process, right? And have not planned it through, have not anticipated what it's the impacts. I would really like you to be able to take a look at the entire budget and see what are all the driving numbers going to be looking like for this upcoming fiscal year, and then work this in. And that gives us plenty of time to determine what's that amount, what do you want to set, and we can turn around and then start being really thoughtful in our educational process of promoting this program and providing the appropriate assistance moving forward. And we might be able to work in some numbers. So you got some basic idea. You could go ahead and move this forward as an adoption of ordinance, right? It's setting a program in place for when you want to fund it. And so we could get the entire system in ordinance and in place. We could then be providing you some data by the first of the year on what we're projecting. We're starting to get numbers now. We know what the county tax is going to be looking like. We know what our health insurance rates are going to be looking like. We're getting a sense of what some of our budget drivers are looking like, because some of those come in through a calendar year. And so we could be forecasting some things for you. So you can really take that into consideration as you're moving forward. And but we could get a program in place. Actually executing it is really the way that we wrote it. It's based on when you fund it.
Other questions or comments? No? So we'll move on. The next two items are going to be executive sessions pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405, Sub 6C, to discuss economic development matters. There's no expected action, and there'll be no other workshop items after these. Is there a motion to move to executive session?
Motion to move.
Moved by Councilor Walker. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilor Platts. The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the council will be in executive session. The November 18th, 2024 Auburn City Council meeting will be called to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could have the councilors introduce themselves, starting with Councilor Gary.
Good evening. I'm Belinda Gary, City Councilor at Large.
Good evening, Rick Whiting, Ward 1 City Councilor.
Good evening, Tim Cowan, Ward 2 City Councilor.
Hello, Steve Melks, Ward 3 City Councilor.
Good evening, Jeff Harmon, Mayor.
Good evening, Ben Weisner, City Councilor, Ward 4.
Good evening, City Councilor, Ward 5, Leroy Walker.
Good evening, Adam Platt, City Council at Large.
Hello, I'm Anaya Eggy, and I am a student representative.
Phil Kroll, City Manager.
Thank you. There are no consent items tonight. The first item of business will be approval of the minutes of the November 4th, 2024 regular City Council meeting. Are there any errors or corrections? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilor Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Weisner. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative.
I should probably abstain.
You weren't here? Yeah, there'll be 6 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. Councilor Milks was not at the prior meeting, reflected in these minutes. Our next item is we're happy to welcome our recently elected and re-elected legislative delegation. If you'd like to come up to the table in the front. We have Representative Lee and Representative Libby and Representative-elect Chapman. We all very pleased to have you here. Congratulations on your recent election or re-election. It's always a great opportunity to be able to have a discussion with the delegation prior to the start of the session. So we give you each an opportunity, if you'd like to share with the council your thoughts about the upcoming session and maybe what you think some of the priorities are. And then we'll give the council an opportunity to ask questions or share their thoughts about Auburn city government with you. So if you want, Representative Libby. You
Might have to push.
Gotta hold it. You gotta hold it down.
Hold it the whole time.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's a good ploy to keep us brief. I'm Laurel Libby, State Rep from House District 90, and delighted to be with you this evening and hear your priorities. As for this coming session, there is legislation I anticipate focusing on, of course, at the statewide level, looking at the solar subsidies and what Mainers are having to pay for their electricity. I've been hearing a lot about that over the last number of months, as I'm sure we all have been. And so that seems like something very important that we address. Personally, I've started submitting legislation for this coming session, and I'm certainly interested in hearing town priorities. One bill that I submitted last week was regarding our current FOA laws and making sure that we have good laws in place to keep all of us, government, accountable to the people of Maine. So look forward to seeing that through this session and look forward to your feedback and your priorities tonight. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Representative Chapman.
Hi, Quentin Chapman, represent District 88. Homeless, drugs, taxes, these are all things I hear about quite frequently, and I see it's a huge problem. I'm new to this, not sure how to get running, but I'm going to try. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Representative Lee.
Good morning, Council. Good evening, Council. Adam Lee, House District 89. I was reelected this session and am looking forward to working again on something I've been focused on even when I was a city councilor, which is multimodal transportation and making our roads safer. Certainly an issue that I'm sure you all have seen plenty of here. We've had several accidents involving pedestrians, and so I was able to pass some legislation last session regarding that, and hopefully we can get a less watered down version of that legislation through this year. So I look forward to working with the council on that and anything else that you all have.
Questions or thoughts from the council for the delegation? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only advice is not the amount of education that you have, or because once you're elected, it's an on-the-job process, and it's all common sense. So as long as you keep track of the Senate or House calendar to know what's coming up and keep track of the LDs and the amendments, as long as you read them and use your common sense, that's all you really need. Because to be truthful, I didn't have a whole big education when I got elected to the legislature. And I was privileged by Auburn residents to get put back 3 times.
Other thoughts? Councilor Platt?
Thank you.
Councilor Washington?
Thank you for your comments and what your focus is on. Definitely pleased to hear about the FOIA request, transparency within our local government. Homelessness, drugs, and veterans, very positive with that. With drugs, needles, I can't stress that enough. I hear constant complaints from constituents about needles throughout the city. And one of our near and dear friends that was with us always picking up, Larry Pelletier, who was always picking up needles around the city. So that's always been a strong concern I've heard from constituents within. Definitely veterans, supporting our veterans and keeping our promise to help them. They stood up and sacrificed their time and efforts to serve our country, and definitely being there for them. Definitely with pedestrian safety. Downtown, I see it day in and day out, and I don't see enough done. There's speeding down in downtown area. I've gotten almost hit 4 or 5 times down by roadblock, and I've seen pedestrians complain about the roadblock area. I'm glad to see what some of the city stuff done about pedestrian safety down there, but speeding has constantly increased, and nobody's stopping down by where Gritty's is through there. So I would, that's my comments to see what can be done to help out that downtown area with pedestrian safety. Thank you.
Councilor Platt?
Thank you. First off, just wanted to congratulate you for running. I think that's the first success, is just putting yourself out there and running, and you guys won, so congratulations. It's great to see people as a part of the democratic process. So I'd say, I won't go into I don't have a list here, but I would just say to keep, my request as a city councilor would be to keep your eyes on, I think education is obviously going to be big up in the state. I know there's a whole spectrum of views on education, and that's great. I would just say, with whatever your view is, please think of all children in all scenarios, and I know that we do that. So just keep thinking about children, how they're going to be educated. They're the future of everything that we're doing here. And then I think senior tax relief is something we're talking about on the city council level. I know that at the state level it's difficult. Money doesn't grow on trees, and there's, if you're going to spend money, you got to find a place from where it's coming from. But I know that's something that everyone's thinking about up in Augusta, so I would just say please reach out to us if you need us, and hopefully we can reach out to you and you'll respond to us. But it works well when we're all in communication, and that's all I'd say. So thank you guys again, and look forward to seeing what you all accomplish up in Augusta.
Councilor Walker?
Thank you. I want to thank all of you there for the big win, and we'll be working together, I'm sure. Thank you.
Councilor Whiting?
Yep, thank you for running and serving. My only issue is just budget, as usual, and how the state interacts with municipalities, and I know this is going to be a tough year. I've heard different scenarios. One was $1 billion budget gap, but then I've heard it may be less because of potential projection of higher revenues, but that continues to be a concern at the municipal level on things like general assistance and revenue sharing and education funding.
Councilor Milk?
I want to thank you guys for coming in. I think this is the first time we've had all 3 reps in here talking to us, so I want to thank you for that. I would want to stress, and I'd ask Mr. Lee, if you could reconsider your national popular vote position that you took in the last legislature going forward, because giving the people of Auburn's representation to the state of New York and the state of California based on how they vote, I don't think that benefits the city of Auburn, the people of Auburn, and it actually would have worked against you this year. So but I would also ask you guys to work together on the budgets and come up with stuff that benefits the people of Auburn and people of Maine. Thank you.
Council Cowan.
Congratulations to you all. Thank you for coming in tonight. A lot of my priorities have already been said, but I think, yeah, just to reinforce, look forward to and thank you in advance for the hard work you're going to have to do in terms of the budgeting and finding those the right and very hard choices, I think. But just to particularly emphasize, here in Auburn, we're looking at potential growth in businesses, which means we're looking at potential growth in development and new families. So, emphasizing education, but at the same time trying to find tax relief for our elderly. And those are two challenging things, but those are two to note. Thanks.
I have a few thoughts. I'm going to drill down probably a little more granular for you. So I think we all realize that as members of the legislature, you're going to grapple with a lot of policy issues that affect people in Auburn, but don't necessarily directly affect the functioning of municipal government. So I'm going to try to keep my comments specific to things that I think will affect the operation of municipal government. So I think the first thing I would touch on is state taxes. I think across the state during the election, there was a lot of discussion about the current rate of state taxes and lots of proposals to potentially cut taxes at the state level. And I would ask, as you're having those discussions, if you think about the effect on municipalities. Typically, if there's taxes cut at the state level, that's going to have to result in budget reductions, right? Can't run a deficit. Those of you who've been here have grappled with this every year. There's some really direct impacts when that happens on the municipality. So general revenue sharing was mentioned. General revenue sharing for us is 17% of our operating budget. General purpose aid to education is 57% of the school operating budget. So these are large budget items at the state level, and as you grapple with proposals considering state tax cuts, it would be beneficial to the municipality if you kept in mind that there can be some either very dramatic service cuts or significant property tax increases if there's a pass-through on the revenue being decreased to the municipalities. Unfunded mandates is always one of our favorite topics at the municipal level, and for those that are new, the legislature can pass mandates as long as they fund 90% of it, but they can override that with a 2/3 vote, and from time to time, the legislature comes across some policy issues that they're very interested in passing, which there aren't dollars to fund, and it's not unknown in the past that they had a 2/3 vote and said, well, we'll just pass the bill on to the municipalities. And there's really no margin for that at the municipal level. We're really under a lot of pressure as it is with property taxes, so it asks that when those proposals come to you about unfunded mandates, that you consider the effect that will have on the municipality. We could probably be here all night tossing around ideas about property tax relief, but I want to point out some items that are existing programs for which changes in the way the state funds these could lead to real property tax reductions at the local level. As you probably know, the way this works at the local level, the council sets a budget, but the tax levy is the budget less outside revenue we get, federal money, grants, state money, but the majority of that is state funds. So a couple things to think about. Again, mentioning general purpose aid to education. Over the last few years, that was increased to 55%. It's very important to the municipality to maintain that funding level, as is the 5% revenue sharing percentage. Often not talked about, but revenue sharing 2, which the legislature put in place to recognize service center communities, has a real impact on Lewiston, Auburn. Lewiston is the #1 dollar recipient of Rev 2, and Auburn's third on the list. So when people start talking about potential policy decisions, if it affects revenue sharing, I'd like you to think about that, because again, decrease in revenue sharing will have a really significant either service reduction or property tax increase at the local level. Things that, as you're talking about potential property tax relief, some areas that you could think about. So the homestead exemption, we currently get a 76% reimbursement from the state. So everyone knows how that works, right? You get a homestead exemption, you apply for it, that amount's deducted off the value of your property, so the property tax goes down. But it really isn't 100% of what the exemption is, because the state only sends us a check for 76% of that. The prior agreement was to increase 3% per year till it reached 100%. A couple of years ago, the legislature froze that. We're not getting any increases. So it's kind of a shell game, where what's actually happening is people get the homestead exemption, but the 24% we have to raise through the property tax levy. So there's going to be, as I understand it, a bill coming forward to ask for the restoration of the 3% per year. If you could give that some consideration. General assistance was mentioned by a couple of the counselors. Currently, the state reimburses us at 70% of general assistance. It's 70% of state rules, and the state mandates the minimum amount. The council, either the last meeting or the meeting before, we approved the 2025 minimum threshold. We just do the minimal threshold reimbursements for general assistance that allows us to get the state reimbursement, but it's only 70%, and there's no administrative cost. So in Auburn, over the last few years, because of the increase in the need for general assistance, we had a 300% increase in administrative costs. So we've gone from 1 person to 3 persons to administer this. There was a bill last time. I know that the 2 that are returning, I'm sure, are very familiar with this. It made it through the legislature, it got to the appropriations table and died. But it's going to be coming back, and this would be another area where if the state paid increase the reimbursement, the municipalities are asking for 90%, that comes right off the property tax levy. Marijuana licensing fees, you'll recall that the promise that the state made when they went into the marijuana business was that municipalities that opted in would get a share of the revenue that came in from marijuana licensing. Well, that never happened. The revenue comes in, the state keeps it all. So if you're a city like Auburn that's opted in, we're not we did our part and said, okay, we'll opt in, but there's no reimbursement. Councilor Libby?
Sorry, can you explain that a little further? Remind me of the mechanism and any explanation the state has given for why that revenue sharing has not happened?
Well, I'm not really sure why it hasn't happened.
The original proposal of the legislation had a share going to the opting in municipalities. When it passed the legislature, I don't know if it was 130th or 129th, it got stripped out and it was just state.
Right, so it got passed, and, sort of the carrot to get people to opt in was a share of the revenue. So we got the carrot, but we don't get to eat it, I guess is a way to put it. Yeah, it's passed, but we don't, but the revenue share part didn't.
Can I, yeah,
Sure.
we'd like the carrot, and understandably. I know you work with MMA, and I believe the city manager does as well. Do you know if MMA is putting in a bill for municipal share of the cannabis taxes?
Well, we work with the Service Center Coalition, Maine Municipal,
Yeah.
and with the Mayor's Coalition. I'm not aware of any of those three, the organizations submitting bills for that.
It's on a list of bills that I have, and so if you catch wind of anyone else submitting that, I would be happy to submit that.
I'm not sure who would handle that on the state level or if it's MMA, but I do know there are cannabis working groups that you could, they're gonna be bills introduced.
Oh, no,
regarding-
I'm saying I'm ready to introduce the legislation myself. I'm just curious if there's an MMA.
Not that
I
I
thi-
know.
the point I was gonna make, I think organizations like MCIA in the state of Maine, they will introduce bills that have to do with excise tax and sales tax. I think that the local share, I don't think the legislature is gonna look to pass multiple cannabis bills that address revenues multiple times. So
As legislators, we get to actually propose bills, and so my suggestion is, and I know that there's been previous iterations, I think in the 131st, there was a bill to create a municipal share. And so I would be more than happy to introduce that.
Representative Libby?
I think just for clarification, so any of the organizations that have a bill like that, Councilor Platts, would be shopping it around to find a legislator who's willing to submit it. So I think Representative Lee is saying he is willing.
my experience is that I haven't seen any bills surrounding cannabis that deal with revenue that have not been introduced through legislators by cannabis work groups. I've not seen any state organizations use legislators to introduce excise tax, sales tax, or local share bills, but I don't pay attention as closely as you
Just to
guys.
clarify, the outside organizations can't actually introduce a bill themselves. They go to someone like Representative Lee and ask him to sponsor. So moving on from that, state funding of special education, as everybody knows, very, very expensive to fund special education. The municipalities are responding to state regulations. Some of those are passed through from the federal government, but some of those are at the state level. They currently reimburse us at 50%. There's going to be a bill, I understand, coming to the legislature to consider increasing that to 100%. So things like that, you know, if there was an increase in special education funding, that would drive down the tax levy, which in effect helps us with the property tax relief. Two last things. I understand there'll be a bill coming forward relative to revenue sharing for meals and lodging. So the rev share that's happening right now does not include meal and lodging taxes. Auburn is the 11th highest generator of, as a municipality, of meals and lodging taxes. Over the last couple of years, on average, the state collected $110 million in meal and lodging taxes generated out of Auburn. The proposal that's coming forward asks for a 1% municipal share, which, you know, in the scheme of $110 million doesn't sound like a lot, but things like this add up, and, you know, $1.1 million in increased revenue would certainly help the property tax. And the last one I wanted to mention was state funding of county jails. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, can we go back to the revenue sharing on lodging and meals tax? To the prior question, we'd all been wondering, is that something that MMA is looking to bring forward?
Yeah,
Do you know?
yeah, I think that MMA will be bringing that forward. Yeah, thank you for that. State funding of county jails, I think, is a real significant issue, you know. The people that are being brought to the county jails by law enforcement, like Auburn Police Department, they're all being charged with state crimes. Whether they are released on bail or not is a decision that's made pursuant to state law, state regulations, and by state-regulated bail commissioners. When they go to court, the decision whether to continue to hold them is made by a state judge. The sentences are made by the state pursuant to state sentencing guidelines, and the county willingly participates in this. But in Androscoggin County, it costs $9 million to run the jail for a year. They generate through other sources $2.5 million in revenue, which means $6.5 million of doing that work on the behalf of the state is falling to the taxpayers in Androscoggin County. $1.6 million of that is Auburn's share. We pay 26% of the county tax. So 50% of the county tax bill that's being paid in Auburn is for funding for the county jails. And we'd like you to give consideration of that if a bill comes forward. Again, things like this that would increase the share on broad-based taxes will allow us to drive down the property taxes in the municipality. So happy as you go along, answer any questions. We're always available, the city manager, the councilors, and I. Mr. Manager, do you have
Thanks.
thoughts?
Yeah, thanks again for coming. Really appreciate the time. I think most everything has been shared. The Maine Service Center Coalition, so I do chair that coalition, so any information that you're looking for, happy to be able to provide that. The mayor mentioned that he takes a leadership role with the Mayor's Coalition, as well as the Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee. And then I serve as an executive committee member for Maine Municipal Association that then approves what's being recommended by the LPC. So we do have some really critical positions within some of the work that is being done as we look at service centers, and Auburn being part of that, having a focus on that is critical. I also serve on the Lewiston Auburn Metro Chambers Business Advocacy Group. That's a group that also pays attention to bills and how they're impacting local businesses. Obviously, the Paid Family Medical Leave Act that is going into effect January 1st doesn't just affect the city, but also affecting a lot of small businesses. As we mentioned regarding the senior tax stabilization, the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, the marijuana opt-in law, there's consistently these laws that are going into effect that haven't been thought through. And the rules for the Paid Family Medical Leave Act are still not complete. However, we'll be paying into this January 1st with no mechanism to actually make any deposits. So what we've recently heard is, well, you hold all that money and then we'll have something set up for you by March to transfer those funds to. This is becoming very difficult for municipalities to manage because it requires an unfunded mandate as it pertains to administrating these programs.
Yeah, Representative Libby.
Do you have a fiscal note for the first year for what you're estimating the cost for the paid family medical leave to cost the city of Auburn?
Well, we're exploring this. I'll be bringing this before the city council. I'm not supportive of the way that the program is set up. We're actually looking at a third-party option, which will be less on our pet tax payers. So I hope to have that information soon for the councilors. We're having these discussions currently, rather than 1% coming. I'm probably looking at somewhere around 0.8, somewhere like that. That'll be funding that we could save, but also what ends up happening is, just means that we're on the hook for the first quarter. There's nothing we can do about the first quarter. But if we can get a program that is acceptable, then we're not paying those multiple quarters until this program goes into effect. If we go with a third party, then we don't pay them until we actually are implementing the program based on the date that the state has set. So serious problems with these programs that are coming forward that haven't been well thought out. The senior tax stabilization program, what great program, but yet the administrative burden came to the municipalities to manage those 1,400 plus applications that came in. We don't have staff sitting around waiting for projects like this. So that required us to hire someone to come in and administer those programs. So as you're working through these bills, we've got to look at delaying some of these for implementation until they really are thought through and rulemaking is complete.
Yeah, especially on the paid family medical leave. I have heard that there's some in my day job, I represent some smaller municipalities, and so obviously that becomes a big issue for some of them. I've heard some hubbub that there's work at the regulatory level to attempt to have the rules handle municipalities slightly differently. And I've also heard discussions, if that part's not successful, of perhaps emergency legislation to handle municipalities differently. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think we're hearing the same in our circles. We're hearing some of that same conversation. But my concern is also for small businesses that are going to need to manage these. Those are businesses that we support and we want to see thrive here in the community. And I believe that there was a need for part of this, but this broad stroke of this program has been very challenging for businesses, but also for municipalities that are having to manage it.
Council Walker?
Thank you. Once again, while I was thinking as they were talking, we have a real problem with our homeless around here. And we're hoping that the state can help us out in a couple different ways. We've got people standing on every corner pretty near that there's traffic going by. Them people that are standing on them corner, whether you want to call it a job or not, are collecting money. Now, I want them off the corner so they can't collect money because I don't call it a job. I call it a pain in my neck, and someone's going to get run over, and then I'm going to get accused of murder of some kind. So I want you as a state to come down with some rules and regulations. If you're going to allow them to collect money on them corners, then you people need to find a way of taxing them for the money that they're putting in their pocket and walking down to the next store to buy a pack of butts. The other one is we are spending a lot of money between the two cities to just try to make a warming shelter or a place for them to go and get a cup of coffee or to go and get services from whatever city they happen to be part of. No state is actually giving us money to do this. We're finding ways of taking it out of one pocket, putting it in another to be able to pay these bills. We just saw a nice big one again tonight that has come forward from one of our departments that the bill is almost doubled. When you look at it on paper, they'll tell you it's only $250,000, but it's $1 million going to be held and be used. I don't like them kind of numbers, and I don't like that kind of way of putting numbers together to take care of homeless, which the state doesn't feel it has any worries or any part of. So I believe you people can come up with some bills and some authority that will take the people off the street and will help us to build places that can help to serve them their first cup of coffee, maybe their breakfast, and maybe a place to stay warm.
Other questions or comments by the council? Council Lighting?
Just a quick question. Do we have a cloture date for the legislature yet?
We don't have a cloture date yet. When we have our swearing in and leadership is finalized formally, then leadership will get a cloture date to us, usually later in December.
Council Lighting?
The informal cloture date that I've sort of imposed on myself is mid-December, December 15th.
Other questions or comments from the council? Anything further from the representative? Thank you again very much for coming in. We appreciate being able to share our thoughts with you. Call anytime if we can help in any way or give you any insight.
Same.
About,
Please call us.
Thank you again.
Appreciate it.
The next item will be the first open session of the evening. Any members of the public that would like to address the council on any item that's not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the open session will be closed. We'll move on to unfinished business.
Mr. Mayor, before we get going, just as a piece of housekeeping, I would like to make a motion to ask unanimous consent to introduce two orders, the new business orders of the comp plan. That's order 150-111-82024, as well as order 151-111-82024, that we move those to unfinished business following item 12, and that's just a matter of efficiency to keep all the nominations under unfinished business as opposed to new.
So there's a request from unanimous consent to move items, orders 150-111-82024 and 151-111-82024 to unfinished business. And for clarification for the public, these are two nominations from the appointment committee for the comprehensive plan committee that appear under new business. And the request is to move those so they can be taken up sequentially with the other 10 nominations. Is there any objection from the council? Seeing no objections, the items will be moved in the agenda. Moving on, the first item is Order 129-10032-024, appointing Rex Rhodes, Ward 1, to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Geary. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Whiting. If there's any public comment on this item, please approach the podium, provide your name and address. Not seeing any. Public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Councilor Milk.
For the sake of all of our time, I'm going to make one comment that is pertinent to the whole committee so it's not necessarily directed at Mr. Rhodes. This whole process, I'm looking, and Ward 3 is virtually, we have one representative. The process, to me, has been very partisan. It's very slanted. And I think the committee is not a representation of the people of Auburn, and I'm very concerned with the nature of the committee. And in fact, even when we were picking counselors, we've got 4 members from Ward 2, and the counselors decided that we needed to have the council representation from Ward 2 as well. So when I put my name, and I know Councilor Wisner put his name in as well. And the same partisans voted that way as put this committee together. So I'm going to vote no on all members of this committee, and I think it's not representative of a good mixture of diverse opinion and thoughts in our community. And so that's why I'm voting no.
Other questions or comments by the council? Councilor Whiting.
As a member of the appointment committee, I'd like to point out that we only received 2 applications from Ward 3. One of those persons withdrew. We had an open period of an extra 3 or 4 weeks. Nobody came forward from Ward 3. Furthermore, we had the greatest number of applications from Wards 2 and 5, and so that's where the larger number of people come from. But there was no partisanship in this. There's no discussion of party politics or any of that nonsense, and I disagree with Councilor Milks completely on that.
Other questions or comments by the council? Councilor Geary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I take my position on the Appointments Committee very serious. Of all the committees that we've had to put people on, we've bent over backwards by adding more weeks for more people to turn in an application, and we tried to balance it the best way we could once we got going, and also by adding those that seem to be a good fit for this comprehensive plan. I know only a few of the different parties that have done this, but I don't know everybody. I didn't base it on, oh, this one's a Democrat, this is a Republican, this is an independent. I based it solely on the application that they put in, and I'll stand on that.
Other questions or comments by the council? Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 130-100-32024, appointing Rebecca Swanson Conrad from Ward 2 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Seconded.
Moved by Counselor Walker, seconded by Counselor Platts. If there's any member of the public that would like to comment on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 131-100-32024, appointing John Cleveland from Ward 2 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Platts. Is there a second? Seconded by Counselor Whiting. If there's any member of the public that would like to comment on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 132-100-32024, appointing Adam Lee from Ward 2 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Moved by Counselor Walker, seconded by Counselor Platts. If there's any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 133-100-32024, appointing Dennis Bergeron from Ward 2 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Platt, seconded by Counselor Whiting. If there's any member of the public that would like to comment on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 134-100-32024, appointing Matthew Duval from Ward 3 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Geary. Is there a
Seconded.
second? Seconded by Counselor Platt. If any member of the public that would like to comment on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. Next item is Order 135-100-32024, appointing Kelly Butler from Ward 4 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Weisner. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Cowan. If any member of the public would like to provide comment on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Is the council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the motion's adopted. The next item is Order 136-100-32024, appointing Bruce Rio from Ward 5 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Geary, seconded by Counselor Walker. If any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Six having voted in the affirmative and one in the negative, the motion's adopted. The next item is Order 137-100-32024, appointing Jane Coslow from Ward 5 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Moved by
Seconded.
Counselor Walker. Is there a
Seconded.
second? Seconded by Counselor Platt. If any member of the public would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium, provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Six having voted in the affirmative, one in the negative, the motion's adopted. The next item is Order 138-100-32024, appointing Dana Staples from Ward 5 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So
Motion to
moved.
approve. Second.
Moved by Counselor Geary, seconded by Counselor Walker. If there's any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comments closed. Discussion by the council. The council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Six having voted in the affirmative, one in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 150-111-82024, appointing Virginia Keel from Ward 5 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee.
Mr.
Is there a
Mayor,
motion?
you just said Ward 5. Virginia Keel, I believe is Ward 4.
Excuse me, thank you, from Ward 4. I correct that, from Ward 4. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Counsel Wisner. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Cowan. If any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Six having voted in the affirmative, one in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 151-111-82024, appointing Heidi Bertels from Ward 1 to the Comprehensive Plan Committee as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Councilor Platt,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Geary. If any member of the public would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium, provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. The council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Six having voted in the affirmative and one in the negative, the motion is adopted. For people that are following along in the public, we are now back on unfinished business item 13. This is Order 147-1021-2024, authorizing the city's general obligation bonds in the amount of $983,000 to finance the school department's FY25 capital improvement program. This will be for second reading and a public hearing. To remind people, this is the item that passed by the council at the first reading at the prior meeting. This was an item discussed during the budget deliberations, which was inadvertently left off the CIP budget order. Is there a motion?
I move to authorize as presented.
Moved by Councilor Whiting. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cowan. We'll now open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the public hearing will be closed. Discussion by the council? Is the council ready for the question? The vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Platt?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
No.
Counselor Whiting?
Yes.
Counselor Cowan?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes.
Counselor Wisner?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Six having voted in the affirmative, one in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is ordinance 2011-04-2024, amending Chapter 12, Article 4 of the Housing Code regarding property maintenance and vacant buildings. This is a second reading and public hearing. As a reminder to the public and the council, this item was before the council and passed on its first reading at the prior meeting. Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by Councilor Whiting to adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cowan. We'll now open the public hearing. Any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the public hearing will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? The vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Gary,
Yes.
Counselor Whiting,
Yes.
Counselor Cowan,
Yes.
Counselor Milks,
Yes.
Counselor Weisner,
Yes.
Counselor Walker,
Yes.
Counselor Platts.
Yes.
7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll now move on to new business. We'll be taking up item 3 as item 1 and 2 were disposed of under old business. So the next item is order 152-111-82024, appointing Kristen Chapman as associate member to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term that expires 5/1/2026, as nominated by the Appointment Committee. Is there a motion?
So
Motion
move.
to
Second.
move, second, third.
So we'll say Councilor Geary moved and Councilor Walker was the second on this. We'll open public comment. If any member of the public would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Seeing none, public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. The council ready for the question? The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is ordinance 21-111-82024, Lake Auburn Watershed Text and Map Amendments. This is a first reading. The council will recall that this is the second part of recommendations coming forth from the ad hoc committee regarding the Lake Auburn Watershed Overlay District. The council previously adopted the septic regulations. This comes forward from the group that included members of the Lake Auburn Water Protection Commission, the Auburn Water District, and residents of Auburn. This has been to the planning board, and the planning board recommended adoption. Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by Councilor Whiting. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cowan. If any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Seeing none, public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? The vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Whiting,
Yes.
Counselor Cowan,
Yes.
Counselor Milks,
Yes.
Counselor Weisner,
Yes.
Counselor Walker,
Yes.
Counselor Platts,
Yes.
Counselor Gary.
No.
6 having voted in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll move on to reports. For the mayor's report, the first item, I would like to recognize our city clerk, Emily Carrington, for the outstanding job processing the recent election. One of the bedrocks of our democracy is free and fair elections. It's when you hang around City Hall, you find out there's many hours of work that goes into this by the clerk, her staff, other city workers helping out, and all the volunteers that work at the polls. It's a really long day on the day of the polls. I've got a number of citizens who commented about how well the election ran, and also from several poll workers. So kudos to you, Clerk Carrington. It was an excellent job, and we really appreciate the work for you and the staff and the job that you did for us. I'd also like to recognize Chief Moen. A week ago, Chief Moen was sworn in as the president of the Maine Chiefs of Police Association. He's not only being sworn in for this year, we find out that he is kind of doing double duty. He was the first vice president, and for unfortunate circumstances, the president couldn't continue, so he's been filling in the job for most of the last year and will be the president of the association this year. The Chiefs of Police Association is a really important organization, not just for the training and knowledge transfer, but as a voice on policy matters for the legislature and for the municipalities. So we're really proud to recognize Chief Moen as being sworn in as the president of the organization. I also attended the Good Food Council meeting this last week for their updated action plan. They've put a lot of work into this. They had great attendance at the meeting. Anyone that wants to check out the Good Foods Council updated action plan, you can go to LA Food Plan, all one word, lafoodplan.com, and they have a presentation of their updated action plan. And lastly, I want to thank the assessor's office. They put on their second public meeting for the reevaluation. This time the contractor was there as well to provide more information about their process. It was well attended, lots of questions by the public. And if folks want more information, you can go to the city's website, and on the home page there is a Reval Auburn button, and they'll be updating the process as they go along. That's all I have. Councilor Geary?
I'll bow to my committee chair on the homeless committee.
Thanks. Councilor Whiting?
I'd like to congratulate the Central Maine Community College Mustangs. The men's soccer team won a national title, following in the footsteps of the women who won a basketball title, national basketball title a few years ago.
Councilor Cowan?
Just a quick update from the ad hoc committee on homelessness. First, I want to thank there were members of that committee and Mayor Harmon who attended Preble Street's conference on homelessness a couple weeks back. I think it's a wealth of information that we're going to be incorporating into our recommendations for the city. And so, more to come.
Thanks. Councilor Milks?
None tonight.
Councilor Wisner?
Thank you. I think last time I talked about having the recycling committee come and give us an update. I was wondering if we can get that scheduled, as well as if they have any developments in regards to composting as well.
So I believe that Mr. Manager can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that the request for proposals for solid waste, recycling, and organic waste will be going out this week. And I think that we certainly can have the manager or the assistant city manager provide an update to the council and workshop about the RFP. The assistant city manager will know the answer to this. I think the proposals are due in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Within 30 days of us releasing it, so if we get it out by this week, 30 days from that date.
Right, and so I think we'll know a lot more about what the programs look like once we get the proposals back and the staff selects a vendor. I think at that time we can have a more detailed description of how that's going to work. But they have requested organic waste services for composting.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Councilor Walker?
Thank you. We have a big Thanksgiving dinner coming up on Thanksgiving Day at the Senior Center at Pettingill Park. Door opens at 11, noontime we will serve. Please call in to let us know that you're attending on, come and call the Recreation Department, please. We want to keep the numbers straight so we know how many people to serve that day. And the other thing is tree lighting in New Auburn, not to be mixed up with the one that Auburn is going to do. December 7th, New Auburn, tree lighting at 5:30, and the man with the white whiskers will show up there. So bring all your kids, please. Get there before 5:30.
And that's at Anniversary Park, is that correct?
No, that is at Sullivan Park behind Rowley's Diner. We will be doing it right there in the green area, and there's plenty of room there for people, so please show up.
Thank you. Council Platt?
Thank you. A couple updates. The first, let's see, from the school finance committee meeting, just an update. The school department is kind of nearing the end of the facilities study that was conducted by Harriman and Associates. In that process, the school has decided they're going to go out to bid for an architect of record. This is either meaningless info or meaningful info, depending on if you care about this. But rather than go out to bid every single project for the school as they rip through this checklist of facilities upgrades over the next 5 to 10 years, or 1 to 10 years, they're going to have one architect on record that they can consult with and lock in a lower price for all of those projects. So that was one piece of information that was learned at the finance committee meeting. The reason I'm bringing it up, there were some questions from the school department as to how the city handles this. For example, with the public, if Superintendent Doris hasn't reached out to you, she had some questions about with the public safety building, do we GC that internally? Do we GC that through an architect? Do we GC that through the construction company? So
I can follow up.
Yeah, you can follow up with her. So that's one update. Second update, we just sat down in the audit review committee, myself, Counselor Gary and Counselor Whiting, as well as another school committee member and our civilian representative. And that was more of rather than a review of the previous audit, which we were all privy to at the last meeting, this was looking forward into the next audit cycle. They reported to us some of the generic things that they will always put a spotlight on every year with the audit. And then we also asked, what are some items that you guys are looking into next year due to the deficiencies of the previous year? And they were able to explain that, why I'm bringing this up now. If there's anything that the mayor, the city manager, other counselors would like us as the audit committee to communicate to the auditors as to where we think efforts should be spent. They have these little spot audits where they can look at one piece of a program. We have the ability to suggest those things to them. So if you guys have any thoughts on that, please reach out to one of the three of us so we can communicate that to the audit company. Next, you guys may have seen in the paper, front page of the paper, but at least in my first year with the school committee, we just completed our first negotiation with one of the labor unions. I think that article was maybe a little premature. It has not been voted on yet by either the union or the school committee. But if it's something you'd like to follow along with, that contract negotiation will be voted upon this Wednesday's meeting. I personally believe it was a very fair compromise. It was with the educational support personnel, so that's ed techs, as well as school secretaries. So a very important component of the school system. And there was, I think, a good compromise there. So I don't know if they'll be getting into the details of that tomorrow. It all took place in executive session, but we'll be voting on it. And once we vote on it, I believe then everything is public at that point. So, and then the last piece, sorry, this is a long one. The last is that for anyone who's interested, on Wednesday, there will be the first presentation of the fiscal year 2026 school budget. So I don't know exactly what the presentation will entail. It'll be a preliminary presentation. So this will be the first taste that we get of where the school department thinks it's heading in the next fiscal year budget cycle.
Thank you, Representative Egge.
I just wanted to say congratulations and great job to all of the students at Edward Little who participated in the drama production of Anything Goes. I went to see it and it was really excellent. So yeah, just shout out to all those kids who put in a lot of hours for that.
Great, thank you. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. First, just congratulations to Chief Jason Moen and his staff. They successfully achieved their 6th national reaccreditation status from CALEA, which is the Commission for Law Enforcement Agencies. The first accreditation for that agency was in 2007. They are in compliance with over 461 standards, which are best practices for law enforcement agencies across the nation. Of the 150 law enforcement agencies in the state of Maine, there's less than 5 that are nationally accredited. Auburn being the agency that is one of the full accredited agencies. Nationwide, it's less than actually 1% of law enforcement agencies that achieve that national accreditation. So great job to Chief Moen and his staff. It's a heavy lift to get that work done, but it pays off more than what we see every single day with the quality of our staff and the reporting and the work that they do. Next, on Sunday, Councilor Walker talked about the one on December 7th, but Sunday, December 8th, the city at 3:30 will be kicking off the Christmas holiday parade and tree lighting. We're pleased that we do have a tree confirmed, so we are moving in the right direction. The theme for the parade is Christmas Around the World. We have around 12 registered participants in the parade. We're hoping for a few more, so please help get the word out. We are still taking applications for anyone who would like to submit a float or walk in the parade. So a lot of great things happening in the community as we move towards the holiday season. Thanks. The parade will start at right in front of Raleigh's Diner, and it will move to Festival Plaza. It was where the tree lighting will be. Thanks, Counselor. Yeah.
We'll now move on to the second open session of the night. If there's any members of the public that would like to address the council on an item that's not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Push.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't
Yeah,
push.
it's open.
Is it too late to be considered for the comprehensive plan board? It is. Is it?
But it is they're open committee meetings, I believe. So
Yeah, so-
any member of the city can show up and participate.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Council Platt. So there'll be numerous public sessions, both on chapters. So there's different chapters, say recreation, transportation. So people that have a particular interest in that can participate in that, and there'll be a series of public hearings where the public can participate with the committee and the contractor. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. I'm John Cleveland. I live at 183 Davis Avenue in Auburn. I just wanted to take a moment as a public citizen who was actively involved in this past election, including throughout the entire day of the election there, just to congratulate our city clerk again. This was an outstanding job. There were thousands of absentee ballots cast that were carefully processed and carefully counted in this election. There were hundreds of people who came to register to vote the day of the election. Emily was ready for it. Everybody who wanted to vote had a chance to vote, had a chance to register, had a chance to cast the ballot that they wanted to cast. Our election turnout was somewhere around 12,500 voters in Auburn. If you look at the active voters, because a number of people really might not be there, it's probably around an 85% turnout in this city. That is a huge amount of work to organize for, to plan for, to have enough ballots, to make sure they're accurately counted, that everyone who wants to cast a ballot gets a chance. Went to every single nursing home and residential facility to make sure that those individuals who wanted to cast a ballot in those facilities had a chance to do it in a neutral atmosphere to cast for whomever they felt was the best person. Auburn is extraordinarily lucky to have Emily run this election for us. She did a spectacular job. It was a fair election. It was an accurate election, and that's what the people deserved, and that's what they got. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that would like to address the council? Seeing none, the open session will be closed. There's no further business before the council tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Council Wisner. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Platts. All those in favor? Opposed? The council will be adjourned.